Okay. Um, okay. Welcome to the Core Argument Workshop from Question to Claim. I'm your host, Jessica Deal. I'm a social behavioral scientist and an academic writing consultant. And this is a working session. It's not a lecture, so I hope you're ready to get busy. Just a little bit of housekeeping. In the interest of keeping down the background noise, please stay muted unless you're talking. Of course, I welcome questions throughout. Feel free to put something in the chat, raise your hand, or of course, you can just interrupt me. I'm happy to take questions throughout. Um, let's see, I'm just, oh, okay. Setting up. Okay, yeah. So if you're welcome to share your city or country in the chat. I'm in Denver in the USA. And I also have included the from question to claim template in the chat. Let me know if you don't see it. I can upload it again. Today, we're going to cover a couple of things. Going to start with what a core argument is and why it matters. Then we're going to go through two prompts with a little bit of working time, about 5 minutes each. Um, Prompts for building your argument, including being clear on your claim, developing reason, and listing your evidence. And then we're going to move into prompts 3 and 4, which are about strengthening your argument, thinking about counter arguments, developing a warrant, and answering the very ever important so what. I'll end with some next steps to keep you moving and then open it up for Q&A. Before we get started, just a little bit about me. Um, this is my background and a little bit about my publishing track record. I'm not going to read through it here. You can glance through, but what I want to do is start by asking, and I suspect this could be why you're here. Do you have a research project sitting on your computer right now that you know should be published, but somehow just isn't getting there? I get it. I've been there. So, a little bit about my background. After graduating from the University of Colorado, I ended up being hired at the National University of Singapore as an assistant professor in the School of Design and Environment, mainly because I had a publication track record, which previous hires had lacked, and they needed tenurable faculty. Well, after 7 years at NUS, I was at a crossroads. It was apply for tenure or step away. And while I love teaching and I really love research, I realized that Denver was calling me back. And it was time to not just leave academia, but also realign my life goals and passions. But I still write journal papers. In fact, I currently have two papers under final review, one of them going on 6 months, so I should really follow up on that one. And I'm also sitting on an invitation to write and submit a new paper with an open access waiver. And I'll probably be doing that in the next month or two and maybe thinking about a free live workshop where we could work on that together. If anyone else is moving through paper writing process. I also regularly review manuscripts, generally about two a month, and I help others navigate their academic path. What I see among grad students, early career faculty, and even well established scientists is that getting published can be a huge hurdle. Too often, academics spend years entrenched in research only to hit that publish or perish phase at the last minute. And this creates a culture of anxiety that then turns into writing procrastination. I find it ironic that we're trained extensively to be rigorous scientists, but never actually taught how to write a journal paper. At least I wasn't. Well, guess what? It doesn't have to be that way. And I'm a teacher, a writer, and a social scientist here to help you develop tools and skills and confidence that you need to get your research published. So that's what we're going to get on track with today. This workshop is a first step towards that goal, and we're going to address what I find is the most critical missing piece of many of the manuscripts that I review, and the main reason papers get rejected, namely, no core argument. Okay, just a few more things before we dive in. Now that I've told you a little bit about me, I want to make sure that you feel like you're in the right place. So, who are you? Suspect that you align with one or more of these cases. For example, you might be an early career researcher. You finish data collection but struggle to frame your research clearly and organize it into a publishable paper. You might be an interdisciplinary scholar. So, you work across disciplines or use qualitative or mixed methods and need guidance on structuring complex, multifaceted research. You might be an overwhelmed grad student. You're juggling coursework, teaching, and your thesis, and you're not sure where to even start with turning your research into a journal paper. You might be a community based practitioner. You work outside traditional academia, um, for an NGO, for a government agency, or in consulting, and you want to publish your case studies, interventions, or practice based research. You want to establish your expertise. You might be a non native English speaker. You're brilliant at research, but writing for English language journals feels like an extra hurdle. And you need strategies that work for you. Um, Please share which one or which ones align with where you are in the chat. I'd love to know where you're coming from. And basically, in short, if you are a social or environmental scientist who wants to publish in a peer reviewed journal, you're in the right place. So let me re-upload. I see a note that nothing is in the chat. Let me re-upload the template in just a minute. Um, yeah, so we'll get to the workshop piece in just a few slides. Before we get there, I want to get real about a few things. Today, the stakes are higher than ever. We're living in an environment of political upheaval and misinformation, and independent research matters more than ever. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I've published a two-part blog in the last month about bias in academic publishing, titled "Are We Climbing the Academic Tower or Reinforcing the Pipeline of Privilege?" Today it's both easier and more difficult to publish. There are more journals online. Something like 1 million new papers are published every year, but bias persists. And so while this workshop isn't designed to address this complicated issue, we will address the single most important thing you can do to make your paper more publishable, which is articulate your core argument. So I like this quote by Mark Twain. It sort of gives a little bit of sort of grounds us in preparing to developing an argument. The quote is, "There's no such thing as an original idea. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope." As researchers, we're constantly building on what came before us. And that means that no idea is original. Someone else has already published on your topic. So, what really matters is what you're bringing to the conversation that's new. And that means that you're offering one of three things. You are confirming what has already been published, you're extending what has already been published, or you're contradicting it. So, what matters as we go into developing a core argument is articulating what is your one important idea. This is your core argument. An argument is meant to persuade a reader into believing something or to believe it more strongly. In the scientific world, the argument is a single significant idea supported by evidence. You should be able to state it in one or two clear sentences emerging from or linked to some scholarly discourse. Lacking a core argument in your journal paper could be the main reason that it gets rejected. So, the single most important thing you can do is state your argument clearly and early in your paper, and then structure everything else around it. So, as we start to dive in, this is a shortcut to developing an argument by starting with your hypothesis or your research assumption, going from your question that you originally asked to the claim, which is how you've decided to answer that question based on your research evidence. So not all research starts with or is based on a hypothesis. Some research starts with an assumption. And this is common in qualitative or mixed method studies. And you might not even have an explicit assumption, but now is the time to articulate the implied assumption or assumptions that motivated your research project, that motivated your questions or your general topic. Now, I'm not talking about an assumption that as something that you believe to be true, but rather an assumption that was a statement of your prediction of the unknown relationship between two variables, concepts, or phenomena. So basically, what was motivating the logic behind your research project? So, a hypothesis or an assumption is basically your claim of what is happening and the logic behind it. When we move into developing an argument, the argument is your claim supported by the evidence resulting from a test of your hypothesis or your explicit or implicit assumptions. So it's your claim plus the logic behind it, plus the evidence supporting it. Okay, we're going to move into the first writing prompt, and I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. And the question that I want you to answer is, what claim does your research make? So don't worry, there will be 4 writing prompts, and this is just the beginning of building your core argument. The first step is to be clear on what claim does your research make. Write in 1 to 2 sentences. Of course, you can write more, but ultimately you want to pare it down to 1 to 2 sentences. And you want to be specific. So extend any vague words like it's important or it's significant and say why. Why is it important? Why is it significant? Some starters might be to state, I agree that, or this paper demonstrates that, or my findings suggest that. All right, I'm going to pause for 5 minutes and we'll reconvene. Okay, so that was just about 5 minutes. You might still be working on it, but let's keep moving along. You can always come back. If I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if you'd like to share or get any feedback, since it's a small group, happy to do that. In any case, let's continue to the next part, where we're going to start to build your argument. Okay, so we've started to develop the claim. This is what answering the question, what do you want your reader to believe? Next is to develop the reason and answer why should your reader agree with you? So you want them to believe something because of why. And then the third part is being really clear on the evidence. So what out there demonstrates that your claim is true? And so this is the evidence comes directly from your research results. So the reasons answer why your claim matters, and the evidence answers what out there proves it to be true. So they're not the same things. Remember that research is meant to confirm, extend, or contradict the existing literature. That is the contribution that you're making. That is where you develop your core argument from. So, what is it that you're confirming, extending, or contradicting? Why should the reader agree that you're doing that? And what is the evidence that shows it to be true? So, the second prompt, I want you to answer the question, why does your claim matter? And what proves it? So, we're trying to understand your reason. So, why it matters because why, and your key evidence. You want to keep them separate. Your reason is, well, just that. It's the logic behind your claim. And then your key pieces of evidence then become what you report in your results or findings section. So make a list of the two, three, or four maybe pieces of evidence that support your claim. A couple of things. Sometimes I find that when I list out my evidence, when I'm trying to support a claim, it points towards more than one claim. So I might have found out a lot of different things. This is great in one sense. Uh, on the one hand, you potentially have two papers. So you want to select evidence that directly supports this claim and park the other pieces of evidence to the side with the idea that maybe you write a second paper from that. Another issue is that maybe your evidence points towards a slightly different claim. This is also fine. It's just time to refine your claim. This exercise is meant to save you loads of time because when you write your results section without a clear argument, you often find a mismatch. So being clear on the claim and the evidence now and how they fit together will really save you time later. And so as you develop your claim and you list out your evidence, as they start to become a match, as you move into drafting your paper, those pieces of evidence are what you use to outline your findings section. And in that way, you can build your paper backwards. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to get ahead and get really clear on why your claim matters and what proves it. So I'll be back in a few minutes. All right, let's reconvene. I know this is a quick workshop, but it's just to get the ball rolling. And it's time to move on to the next prompt. Okay, now we're going to focus on strengthening your argument. Now that you have your claim, the reasoning behind it, and your key pieces of evidence, it's time to acknowledge counter arguments and to establish a warrant. A counter argument is really, what out there could be used to push back against your big idea, your claim. You want to imagine a skeptical reader and why they might push back on what they might push back on. You want to anticipate and answer it. Oftentimes we avoid this when we're writing a paper because we don't want to acknowledge those counter arguments. We think it makes our argument stronger. But in fact, acknowledging weaknesses can actually strengthen your argument. And this is because, spoiler, the reader already knows that other research. So if you acknowledge it and then state what you are claiming and why it is significant and it is different, this makes a stronger case for you. The other thing is that you want to establish a warrant. Um, I will get into this a little bit more and give you an example, but just at a very high level, you want to answer, why do your reasons justify your claim? So you're stating a claim and you're giving a reason because, and sometimes they don't logically fit together. So a warrant is needed. It's basically you want to state the general principle that links your reason and your claim. A warrant in an argument is kind of an underlying, it's often unstated assumption or logical connection that connects your evidence to your claim. It explains why the evidence supports the claim. It acts as a bridge in a way that proves that the evidence is relevant. Warrants are essential to persuade an audience that the evidence provided is valid and sufficient. The basic pattern is, when a general condition exists, then this general consequence follows. Now, I know this sounds really vague, so let me give you a very tangible example. Okay, so it's Saturday, so I should water my plants. My claim is that I should water my plants, and the reason being is that it's Saturday. However, you can see that maybe some logic is missing here. Like, okay, why do you need to water your plants on a Saturday? What's the warrant? All right, well, let me expand. My plants need to be watered weekly. I work during the week, and I often have personal obligations on Sunday. Therefore, Saturday is the only day I'm free to water my plants. And in this way, we've established a warrant that links the claim and the reason. Now, keep in mind that there could be arguments against this. A counterclaim could be, well, maybe you find someone else to water your plants, or you just make time on a different day, or you find a way to automate it. So, in this way, you can see that a claim can have a counter argument, but you're trying to make a strong case that this is the best link between the claim and the reason. So, writing prompt number 3 is to answer the question, what is your underlying assumption? What is your warrant? What links your reason and your claim? So you're claiming um, you have this big idea that's come out of your research, and you're claiming it because X, Y, and Z. So do you need to explicitly or implicitly create some sort of logic that hold those two together? Another thing is that often a warrant is implied, but if you have some disparate pieces of evidence, it would be worthwhile for you to be very clear in linking them together. You never want the reader to be questioning your logic. Sometimes it's better to just be very explicit and forthcoming about it. So basically, when the general condition exists, then what general consequence follows? And I'll go ahead and give you 5 minutes and we'll come back. Okay, let's move on to the last part. Again, it's okay if you're not, if you're still writing and still working through this. Going through all four of these prompts might actually help you rethink earlier prompts. So going back and forth and maybe going back to your claim and getting a little bit clear on it, and then going forward to reestablish your warrant, and then picking different pieces of evidence. So it really can be an iterative process, not just a linear one like I'm um, showing you here. But in any case, let's move on to the last part, which is the so what test. No reader should ever be left asking, so what, when they're reading your paper. You want to state the value of your argument and be very clear on why it matters. This is where you reference the research gap and why your research is useful, worthwhile, or significant to fill that gap. Keep in mind that just because there is an area of research that hasn't been investigated doesn't mean it needs to be. In other words, just because you've identified a research gap does not justify filling it. You fill it in one of three ways. You're confirming, extending, or contradicting the published research. So being clear on what the gap is that you're filling and why it matters. The so what test gets asked three times. You can, of course, do this more than three times. And sometimes it's fun to have a partner to do this with who asks you these series of questions. Starting very specifically, you answer, so what? What is your specific contribution based on this research? Then you go a little bit broader. Okay, great. But so what? What is the broader field or disciplinary or interdisciplinary contribution? Then finally, you say, really, but so what? What is the widest significance of your research? What is the broader context that um, you're plugging into? So first, starting with what is your specific contribution? What is your contribution to the broader field or discipline? And then the widest significance. And so, just as a point, just as an aside, how you answer these questions can also help you draft your research paper, especially the introduction. The final, really, so what, the widest significance is motivation to craft your introductory paragraph. This is the broad context, the broad issue that you are going to be addressing. And then the literature review uh, sort of take shape of what is that broader field or discipline, identifying that bigger gap, and then getting even more specific, related particularly to your project. So in this way, you're actually starting to brainstorm the structure of your paper itself. Okay, so let's apply the so what test to your argument. As you answer so what, you really want to understand and be very clear, why does your argument matter beyond your data, right? How does it confirm, extend, or contradict the published research? What is the gap you're filling? Some questions you can ask yourself. Does your argument take a stand? Can someone disagree with it? Does it go beyond observation? Does it avoid speculation? If you can answer yes to all of these, then you're on track to developing a strong core argument. So let me give you about 5 minutes to run the so what test. Remember, you're looking at first, what is your specific contribution? Then broader field or discipline, and then finally the widest significance. And I will come back in just under 5 minutes. Okay, so I know you might be still be working, but that's okay. This was meant to be a brainstorming session, and I provided the framework so that you can revisit it and get really clear on what your core argument is. And really, it probably will continue to evolve. Eventually, you need to land on um, one specific core argument to organize your whole paper, but you can continue to evolve it until you're, if and as you're ready. But as you do work through, you've done a lot of brainstorming around developing your argument, strengthening it, justifying it. But the core argument itself should really be a succinct 1 to 2 sentences. And this acts as a guide or like a North Star for your whole paper. And here are two argument templates that I find are useful. The first one is kind of a standard template. So you would state your argument using this kind of framework. And of course, neither of these are, you don't have to use either of these, but I find it useful, especially as you're if you as you're starting to if you haven't developed a lot of core arguments, it kind of gets you into the flow of it. So the template on template A is structured as: while scholars debate, argue, ignore XYZ, I argue, demonstrate, or suggest that this is happening based on my method of this. Template B is the one that I typically use most often because I like to contradict the established literature. So this one starts with although some sort of general statement or opposite view. So although, research has shown this, nevertheless, I claim this because, and here's my evidence. So these are included in the from question to claim template that's attached in the chat, and I'll also send it out as an email later. All right, so here are just some examples. Of course, there are lots of examples of core arguments, and I really encourage you to start noticing them in the papers that you're reading. I'll just read through them so you get a feel of the diversity. We argue that cryptocurrencies have the capacity to create potential niches for economic survival, while at the same time reproducing conditions of vulnerability and inequality in the long run. Now, notice that these don't necessarily follow the argument templates, so there is a lot of variation. Okay, next argument is that we make the case that lasting transformative change in agri-food systems requires fostering an enabling environment for equality, empowerment, and transformation. Next is we see rural men resisting exploitation in specific jobs without rejecting society's fundamental elevation of the importance of work. And finally, we argue that even when participants understood antibiotic resistance and were willing to adjust their practices, there were cultural and structural challenges demotivating changes. So notice they all start with we argue, or we make the case, or we see this. So they're really starting with their claim. So what's kind of missing is that initial counter argument. So that would probably be a sentence that comes before this core argument. Right. And also notice that each takes a stand, they can be disagreed with, and they go beyond simply describing results. Okay, so we've come to the end of the workshop part, and I have a couple of suggestions for your next steps to keep you motivated and help you continue moving forward. Because ultimately, I assume that both of our goals are for you to publish your research. So one of the main next steps that I recommend is drafting your abstract. And you may have taken my 5-day challenge. If not, sign up for it. It's free. You get a 3 or 4 minute video over each day for 5 days to develop your abstract. And oftentimes, we think of the abstract as coming at the end of the paper. You write the paper and then you use the paper to summarize your abstract. But I have actually found when I shifted to writing my abstract first, it helped me get really clear on the contents of my paper. And it becomes a roadmap for your entire paper. So even though the abstract might still be a rough draft because you are still working out some things, if you start with your abstract, it really can help you have some guideposts for drafting your entire paper. The other things that I recommend are creating an outline and also focusing on your structure before you even dive into the first sentence. So, create an outline by finding a couple of model papers in your field that are broader than but related to your topic and published recently, like in the last 2 years. And if there is a journal that you are thinking of submitting to, or several journals, look through those journals for your model papers because what you're looking for are good examples of a strong introduction, similar methods, similar subject or context, but not just what is written, but how it's written. So, how it's outlined, how it's organized, um, the level of like the different language styles, because each journal, some journals are more theoretical, some are more empirical. So, depending on what journal you pick model papers from, those model papers will be specifically in the format that you really want to emulate. And this will help you start to outline your own paper. It also takes out some of the guesswork. Um, and then I also recommend thinking about structure. So this is really not so an outline would be like your headings and subheadings, but structure is the more macro flow of the whole paper. It's using your core argument, which you've developed here, as your organizing guide. You think of the paper in terms of a hierarchy of section. So you've got the main sections, introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion. Then with each of those, there's a subsection, and within each subsection, you have paragraphs. And your aim is that each of those paragraphs, subsections, and sections are related directly to your core argument with nothing tangential. You don't want a paragraph that's unrelated. Your reviewers will say, "What's the point of this?" Papers are not meant to be written in a linear way. It's not A and then B and then C and therefore D, D being your argument. So you're not building up to a core argument. This would be how a research report or a thesis is written. Papers are written to be argumentative. You start with your core argument. This is my claim because of this, and here is my justification. And the reasons for this, my claim, my core argument, my big idea are A, B, and C. And A, B, and C becoming your key pieces of evidence that go in your results section that then go back to justifying why D. So you start with D, then you provide your supporting evidence, and you come back to D. So here, these are some sort of like tangible things for you to move on to. Other things, sometimes you're just struggling with kind of a consistent writing habit, and you know some of these next steps. Um, but you might be considered you might just be struggling with just sitting down and getting in front of your computer. So I suggest that you could check out my blog called Why Don't You Just Write? And it gives like a series of different activities or strategies. um, Depending, you might find a few of them useful, some of them might not work for you, but it's just a way of sort of getting you into the rhythm of sitting down and writing. On the other hand, if you struggle once you do sit down, so you don't have any problem sitting down, but then the pressure of writing the first sentence is a little bit overwhelming. I also have a blog about writing as an iterative rather than a linear process, and not starting with the first sentence, but really starting anywhere in the paper that feels easy and natural and building out from there. So check that out. Or if you find that you have too many ideas and you're having trouble focusing, check out my blog on Salami Publishing. It's about writing multiple papers from one research project. There are these and many more on the Publish It website. I blog once a month on different topics. So just go ahead and check them out. All right. And yes, I can put some of those links in the blog. Just give me 1 second. I just want to end before we get to the Q&A. Now that we have a core argument, you can use it to guide your writing. The recording of worksheet will be sent out in a few hours, and I'm here to support you. So I do offer a free 30 minutes consultation to talk about your unique situation, see if we can find some quick wins. So I want to be super clear. This is never a sales call. It really is just to get you moving and see if we can match some resources with you. Free resources. Um, but if you are interested in going a little bit deeper, look in your inbox and I have a special offer. It's 50% off Draft It, my essential 10-week workshop. It's a self-paced tutorial to draft your journal paper from abstract to conclusion. Builds directly on what we did today. It's the same framework, but a lot more depth and at your own pace. It's not a how to write this paper, but really a deep dive on how to structure and write all papers. It covers topics such as how to structure your paper and articulating your core argument, which I go a lot deeper into that. So this kind of just scratched the surface. It also addresses writing and refining your introduction and literature review, basic contents and organization, concluding, and also finishing, how to wrap it up. But it definitely goes beyond the standard content of introduction, methods, results, discussion. It's easy to know what actually goes in a paper. What I'm trying to do is help you tackle the two most fundamental, essential, critical elements of what elevate a research report into a publishable journal paper. And that is a clearly articulated core argument and the structure that supports your entire paper. So I'm teaching you how to write journal papers, not just this journal paper. So if you're ready to publish it, go ahead and register for Draft It. You'll have unlimited access, so you can start anytime now, next month, or next year. If you're ready for one-on-one feedback, I also have another offer. So go ahead and check your email. Do note that I offer pricing parity for those in low and middle income countries. So just send me an email with your country and I'll send you a unique code and the discount will apply on top of that. So I truly believe that your voice matters, and I'm here to help you figure out what your unique challenges are to getting published. But of course, in order to do this work, I also have to pay my bills. So I offer both free and paid for services because I earnestly want to get you published. I review enough papers to realize that if I can help people write better papers, then as a reviewer, it makes it a lot easier for me too. I hope you found this workshop useful, and I encourage you to join the free watering hole on the Publish It website. It's a community discussion board. It's a supportive space where academics of all stages, from new grad students to seasoned researchers, can ask questions, share advice, navigate the publishing journey together. And remember, I'm always available if you need some motivation. Okay, I'm going to end and see if there are any questions. You can go ahead and unmute yourself or put them in the chat. Um, and that's okay if you are good. I'm available if you want to connect with me later. Um, I'm always interested to talk about writing journal papers. One last thing. I was thinking of running another free workshop next month, and I'm brainstorming ideas. If you have any feedback, if anything comes to mind, I was thinking of maybe organizing a literature review, going through three methods. Analog, digital, and then of course AI is popping up, and how to make use of maybe all three of those to write better literature reviews. I was also thinking of doing a Q&A session on dealing with reviewer comments or selecting a journal. There's lots of ways to go about selecting a journal, and it's a very individual, there's no one way to do it, it's very individual, or any other topics. I'm always open. Um, Great. All right. Well, thank you sincerely for joining this workshop. I hope it was useful. Please check out my blog and YouTube videos on publishing your research in a peer-reviewed journal. So I add content every month. And finally, yeah, each of you truly are truly my motivation for doing this work. And I wish you inspired writing. Thank you so much.